That's cool, bro. Yeah. What's up, working fans?
Welcome to episode 279 of the Working Fans podcast, where today we have a lot to talk about, and that is all brought to you by Game Up Hard Hydration. It's like your favorite sports drink and your favorite seltzer got together, had a baby, but it's so much better. Let them know about it, Dave.
We're talking about 4 great flavors here. We're talking fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Guys, it comes in an 8-pack, but most importantly, it's only 110 calories, low carb. Enjoy it. Don't feel guilty about it. Just like you can enjoy us.
And we have a lot of wrestling shows to talk about. There's been a lot of big shows over the past week, but we are bringing back the comparisons. And one that you had up that I really enjoyed was Steiner Brothers versus Rock and Roll Express. On the face of it, it doesn't seem, it seems like it'd be able to pick. It'd be easy to pick one team or the other. But Dave, forced to choose, who do you enjoy?
Let me know what you think in the comments. I like the Steiner Brothers. I'm a Steiner Brothers guy here. And the reason why is, even though I saw the Rock and Roll Express before, Steiner Brothers were just like no other team I had ever seen. We talked about it before here when we had the Maximo Brothers on. Some of the moves that the Steiner Brothers would do, that DDT off, the top rope, like Scotty would sometimes do the DDT off of Rick's. There would be a preliminary guy on Rick Steiner's shoulders, and Scotty would just DDT him off the ropes. That fall-away slam Scotty would do where he'd flip his body completely over. The Frankensteiner, Rick Steiner's bulldog up top. The fact that they could German suplex Big Van Vader, like the Steiner line itself, just a nasty clothesline. And then they're defeating teams like the Road Warriors, the Samoan SWAT team, the Skyscrapers. They were just another level of any tag team I ever saw. That being said, mechanical-wise, as far as just good old-fashioned tag team wrestling, being that pure babyface, selling, getting the hot tag, you probably don't get any better than Ricky and Robert, right? I mean, the Midnight Express is probably the greatest heel version of that. And then the Rock and Roll Express is probably the greatest babyface version of that. But for me, I'm a Steiner Brothers guy. Give me the Steiner Brothers all day long.
When I first saw this, I thought 100% it was going to be the Rock and Roll Express, because you remember Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express in the 80s, just those peak tag team matches that they put on. But the more I got to think about the Steiner Brothers were a perfect combination of power and speed. They could do all the big power moves, but they were also very athletic and could keep up in the ring with a Rock and Roll Express. So to me, that kind of gave them a little bit more of the edge, just because they had that extra versatility. Not that the Rock and Roll Express doesn't have that power component, but they were most known for like those really fast matches, those really technically sound ones, the ones that really stick in your mind and remind you of 80s tag team wrestling.
Absolutely. Great teams either way.
Yeah, and either way, these are both teams that I think our memory of these teams really dictates how we look at the tag team divisions now, and how they might not hold up quite the same, because there's some good teams out there, but are there teams that really have that staying power of a Steiner Brothers, of a Rock and Roll Express? That it was more of a thing in the 80s and 90s. And nowadays, teams are more people almost thrown together, or like two guys in a faction that kind of link up, that have similar styles or interests.
I would say the New Day is kind of the last, like, really longevity team that's a straight-up team, other than the Usos, who aren't currently even teaming up right now,
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Usos, too. Those are two great examples of modern tag team wrestling. And it's, it's something that we miss nowadays, being big fans of tag team wrestling. And if you want to talk tag team wrestling, there were some great tag team matches on Wrestle Kingdom 19. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Dave, you saw less of this show than you did of Wrestle Dynasty, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go through some matches and I'll kind of get your opinion on things, because I wrote down like the big happenings from this. And first off, the New Japan Rambo, it kicks off the pre-show to Wrestle Kingdom 19. Fun little, like, almost battle royal type thing, Royal Rumble. And this year it was different because it wasn't for the King of Pro Wrestling Championship. It was for the New Japan Heavyweight Championship, #1 contendership. And one of the special entrants was Josh Barnett. Hasn't been in it in a while. It was a great surprise. What did you think when you heard that?
I thought that was cool. This was that Josh Barnett is taking part in other wrestling events besides Bloodsport. I love Bloodsport and what Josh Barnett is doing over there. And I love the fact that all these different companies get involved with him. But to see Josh Barnett actually wrestling on these different shows is always very cool. Nothing but love for Josh Barnett.
Yeah, he was big in New Japan years ago, so it was great to see him return. Hiroki Goto won the New Japan Rambo, so he is getting a shot at Zack Sabre Jr.'s championship. The first match to kick off the actual show.
Go ahead.
What's that?
I was just gonna say,
okay, so
I mean, I didn't, like I said, I don't know, like if you want to go over all the matches, but like at the end of the day, like I always saw like highlights of the show, and for me, Wrestle Kingdom, I don't know, I was more interested in Wrestle Dynasty itself, even though I didn't get to watch a lot of that either this week. But like one of the big takeaways, which we'll talk about, I guess, on Wrestle Dynasty as well. But one of the big things I liked was. And one of the matches I got to saw was Konosuke Takeshita and Shingo Takagi.
Yep.
I made it a point to watch
that.
Yeah, but go ahead.
So the event kicked off with a 4-way junior heavyweight championship match. And this is typical for Wrestle Kingdom. It'll either be like a 4-way singles for the junior heavyweight championship, but this was a 4-way ladder match for the tag team championship. They don't do many ladder matches in Japan, so it was big that Kosei Fujita and Robbie Eagles beat the other teams. The match that you definitely should check out off this is Mayu Iwatani retained the women's championship over Azumi.
Yep.
El Phantasmo won the World Television Championship in a 4-way match. Tanahashi defeated Evil in a lumberjack match, and that was big because Tanahashi is on the same kind of retirement tour that John Cena's on. And let's get to the match that you brought up. Konosuke defeated Shingo Takagi for the AEW International and Never Openweight Championship.
Also, just one other thing about that Tanahashi match, Shibata came out at the end of that, which set up a match for the following night too, where they
agreed
to. Yes. So,
set up a special exhibition match.
Yep. But yeah, Takeshita, Takagi, I mean, great matchup. Shingo Takagi is one of those guys, whenever I do get to see him wrestle, he always puts on great matches. He's always hard hitting. Takeshita is like a younger version of that, right? Like he just puts on great matches. He's always hard hitting, but athletic too. And I didn't know, I was happy. I didn't know this was a double title match. I didn't know this was going to be for the Never Openweight title as well. And so I was really happy to see Takeshita have both titles, because we've talked about it before. With the WWE being so hot, AEW hasn't like necessarily been a real hot commodity lately. So seeing a guy like Takeshita, hold titles in 2 major companies outside of WWE, like it makes me excited to see like what's this guy's future, because all he does is put on great matches. He wrestled for Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling earlier this year too, and defended that international title. So for me, this was really cool to see him now with both these championships.
100%. This was a good show so far, but starting with Tanahashi, then going to the Takeshita match, this thing was really picking up steam. El Desperado won the junior heavyweight championship over Doki due to Doki suffering an injury in the match. So that was kind of noteworthy. Not a match I was especially pumped for, but you always hate to see a wrestler get injured. Yota Tsuji beat David Finlay for the Global Heavyweight Championship. Naito defeated Hiromu Takahashi. That was big because that was a match that was made. It was supposed to happen during COVID, and now it happened a few years too late. Still a great match, but, Naito is in rough shape. And then to end the night, Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Shota Umino. I was a Shota Umino fan, but it almost feels like they're trying to push him above his rank right now. I don't know if this necessarily felt like a Wrestle Kingdom main event, but it ended up being a good match. It's just not one I would have seen.
Let's do it.
And we will move on to Wrestle Dynasty now.
Yes.
And how much of this show did you end up catching?
Just some more highlights, but it's funny because I'm looking at the I'm looking at the results of this now, and I'm a little upset I missed the pre-show here. I didn't know. I knew Will Nightingale, and I knew there was going to be this 4-way, and I assumed it was on the pre-show, and I missed. But I didn't know about. I'll let you read it off. But Dustin Rhodes and Sammy Guevara and everything too. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was all right. See, Wrestle Dynasty, you have the banner here where it says CMLL, AEW, New Japan, ROH, Stardom.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like, I don't know, like to me, it didn't really feel like a co-branded show. It felt like they kind of sent some people from AEW, but not like a lot and not like huge stars. So that Sons of Texas tag team match could have been bigger. I did watch both matches. They were good, but I was kind of like, oh man, I wish there were some bigger names on this show. And we'll get to it later on. But a couple of the big things you mentioned, Tanahashi and Shibata having that 5-minute exhibition match that led to a time limit draw. A little bit, I'd say, slight disappointment. Not huge, but it's like you expect big things when you get Tanahashi and Shibata in there. And this was kind of like a no result, which is weird.
I saw that one, and actually the next match too. Well, go ahead.
No, you can go move to the next match.
Okay, Mercedes Moné and Mina. I just thought that this was a fun match, and it's continuing Mercedes' hot streak of good matches right now. And seeing her with the what is it? The British Women's Championship, Rev Pro.
Yeah, Rev Pro.
Yeah, well, she had that. I mean, so now, and they have like 4. That comes with 2 titles. So now she has like 4 belts around her. So I really like this presentation. I don't think she's been the hottest character in AEW, but at least you building her up. She has 4 titles now, and I think it's going to make her next couple matches, mean more.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've never seen like a female version of the belt collector.
Right.
And this could be something that's worked for her since, like you said, she hasn't been catching on the biggest since getting to AEW. Another great match to see was David Finlay versus Brody King. You wouldn't expect it, but it was a great, hard-hitting match. And I think really featured Brody well in that Japan setting.
Yeah, no, I was happy to see Brody King on this card. This was a nice surprise too.
Yeah, another great match was Shota Umino defeated Claudio Castagnoli. I thought it was a great match. It was, a way because Shota is linked with Jon Moxley. So it was a great way to kind of tie in those 2 factions and, great match for the card. But the match I want to talk about, the one that stood out for me, was the Young Bucks defeating Hiromu and Naito, Cobb and Great Khan for the tag team championship. And I really enjoyed this Bucks match. It's been a while since I've really enjoyed a match. And I wondered, what is it about the Young Bucks in Japan that makes their matches seem better than the Young Bucks in AEW?
To me, I thought about this. I'm glad you brought this up because I've really got to give the Bucks a lot of credit. I've talked about it on the show before, how I find their characters and everything stale lately, and I haven't enjoyed them as much. But when I found out they won, because I found out before I saw the match they won this, because it got spoiled for me. And I looked at it, I was like, this is so smart, right? Like, this is the old territory days. Like, we're a little stale over here, so now we're going to go over here, and we're going to put on a great match, remind people that we're good, and we'll have the tag titles over here, and it'll feel different over here. And it does, So now what are we doing? We're away from AEW, right? So we can come back a little more fresh. And in the meantime, we're keeping our stock high by having the tag titles over here. Like, I just love the fact that they have the tag titles on them. And I just love the fact that it's a fresh start just being back in Japan.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the Young Bucks in Japan. When I first discovered New Japan, they were a big part of it. And it just always felt fun. So that it really made me feel nostalgic for, when I first discovered Wrestle Kingdom, because I started on Wrestle Kingdom 9.
Yeah.
And that was the one. Jim Ross was on it. Jeff Jarrett was a part of it. The first Wrestle Kingdom that was like widely available in the United States. So
also, Isn't that one of Nakamura's last Wrestle Kingdoms? I want to say too, and AJ Styles.
Yes, I believe it was just might have been. I can't remember if it's 9 or 10 right now, but that was like right when he was finishing up before going to the US.
And Styles is going to be in the Royal Rumble. Yeah. Go ahead.
And talking about finishing up, I'm going to play a quick commercial while we transition to Raw here. But did we talk about the death of Black Bart last week? Did that happen before or after last week's show?
That happened after. Before we get to that, though, Joe, too, one other thing on Wrestle Kingdom we should note, too, Kenny Omega's match, too, Chris Charlton. Wrestle Dynasty. Sorry, Chris Charlton there. He got suspended for comments he made about AEW calling Tony Khan a mark on the microphone, a money mark, and he was very, very anti-AEW. And for whatever reason, I just assumed it was part of him playing a character and playing in the story. Apparently, New Japan thought, no, you need a hiatus. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's true. And that's weird because, I mean, I'm watching the match. I don't have the volume up, but, I mean, it feels like it would fit in the story there, especially if you have, like, two different companies. And even if, like, I don't know where Chris Charlton stands. I know he's a big New Japan guy. He wrote the book on him, a very knowledgeable announcer. I don't think he would be anti-Tony Khan, but even if he is, doesn't that just add to the commentary on the show? Doesn't that add to the story in the match?
I would like to know if he got direction from New Japan to kind of do that storyline, you know, play that up. Because if he did, then there's no reason at all. If he went on his own, then maybe, okay, you went a little bit. But even then, a suspension seems, you know, an indefinite suspension seems a bit harsh. But before we get to our ad, I think you want to say Black Bart passed away. Black Bart, one of the real legends in pro wrestling, worked everywhere. First time I ever saw him was in the Crockett's, you know. But he worked in WWF. He worked in World Class, you know, anywhere you name it. And, yeah, really sorry to hear about his passing.
Yeah, it had been misannounced like a week ago. And, you know, friend of the show, Vinny Berry, who helped Black Bart write the book, you know, kind of took offense to it real quick, as you would, because, I mean, we saw the post about Bart coming home from the hospital. And, I mean, both of us having dealt with death so recently, I think we knew that it wasn't the end, but it was like close.
Right.
And, you know, it was good that he was able to get with Vinny and write the story about that. And if you want to know a little bit more about that book, here you go.
Hey, all you got young wrestling fans out there, listen, old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle Black Bart. It's got some dead good stories in there about some dead good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing, that it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long time.
Get your book today at WrestleVille.com or on Amazon. Wrestleville, it's where wrestling lives.
It's almost more important now than ever to pick up Black Bart's book, because now that he's gone, you know, you want to read what this man went through. These guys, they get into the industry, they sacrifice their bodies, sacrifice their lives, and he's one of the few that actually got to tell his story. So go out and pick up that book, check it out. And Dave, talk about telling stories. We have to get into Raw on Netflix. The debut finally happened. I kind of heard, you know, mixed sentiments about it. Overall, I love the show. I love the look of it, the production. WWE does it top notch. What did you think of it?
I thought it was a good spectacle. Overall, I enjoyed myself watching it. I mean, Punk and Rollins in the main event was fun. Punk got the win. Rhea Ripley back on top. You know, she won the title from Liv Morgan, and I think now she can continue her momentum to being the biggest women's star in wrestling. Also, great to see The Undertaker come back and celebrate with Rhea. And I think this was pointed out on other podcasts too. You know, here we have in the Paul Levesque era, old stars coming back to help put over the younger talent, not being the main part of the thing, just coming back there, you know, to help give their nod. And that stuff you like to see. Roman Reigns, you know, he's the tribal chief now. He beat Solo, which that leads into, I really want to talk about The Rock here for a minute, because I think this is some of the polarizing stuff. The Rock basically was out of character for most of this. And I think a lot of people, you know, were turned off by that. Some people still loved it because it was The Rock. I just took it as we don't have him nailed down for WrestleMania yet. So in the meantime, we're squashing the stuff with Cody. And the way he put the follow on Roman and then looked at him afterwards, to me, it told the story that you could go either way with it. You know, he could be supporting him, or maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, I definitely got the feeling that this was more, I don't even know how to put it, Rock. Even though he was out of character, you were getting The Rock. You weren't getting The Rock in a storyline. You were getting WWE legend The Rock kicking off Raw in a big way. And it was huge because you went from that great intro video at the beginning, which I wanted to talk about just because if you were a fan of wrestling, it was a great summary of everything. If you didn't know about wrestling, it was kind of a good catch up. And then it went to Triple H very quickly. And then he brought out The Rock. And it was a little weird that they weren't continuing what's been going on like all year with The Rock.
Right.
But this was kind of a special event. And this was like getting out your heaviest hitters, which we'll talk about later in the show.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it worked for them and sometimes it didn't. But it was interesting. I thought it was the better of the two Rock appearances, if I'm going to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I'll disagree a little bit with that a little bit later when we talk about Rock on Netflix. But I would say this one had more purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
but okay, so just other notes of this Raw show too, before we move on. John Cena, and I'm going to get to the one I know we want to talk about too, Joe. Don't worry. But John Cena has announced that he will be in the Royal Rumble. One other little note I just want to say. The WWE had an after Raw talk. They wanted to take Jey Uso for yeeting with Travis Scott, but not inhaling. Because apparently they didn't want Jey smoking up on the show. But I thought that was pretty funny and cool. Yeah, great show overall. But yes, the one thing that we hadn't talked about that I want to say, Hulk Hogan back. He came
crashing down, and it hurt this man inside. I loved it. And like, I'm a Hogan fan from like a child.
Sure.
But it's like there has been some damage done over the years. And I don't know why this was so hilarious. Yeah. The funniest part was Jimmy Hart, who was like caught in the background and couldn't get away from it. He went from waving the flag to holding the flag to I don't know what he might have called Hulk Hogan under his breath, but like this is the first time it's really publicly went against Hogan this bad. Even right after the video, it wasn't as bad as this.
No, they couldn't get out of that segment fast enough too. It was funny because I'm listening to him get booed, and then I'm like, oh man, he's got to read this stupid beer thing now, which I'm like, this is going to get even more boos, and it does. And then Cole, like, he reads that about as fast as he could. Like, they don't want to be in this at all. I heard the jokes afterwards. I think Pat McAfee had somebody dressed like Hogan on his show afterwards. And he said, I'm mad at that little runt Jimmy Hart. They were booing Jimmy Hart out there, which I thought, all right, good for Pat. He's having fun with it. But, yeah, I said this in the group chat. I mean, it is what it is. But, if Tony Khan wants to be like Booker of the Year, I think that you sign Hulk Hogan somehow and then you have the Hurt Business just beat the shit out of him.
Right on. A special Martin Luther King Day match.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think if there was anything else we could do to really establish this. But yes, that's, I think, what needs to happen. We just need Hogan beat up, going away. Maybe Mark Henry could come back and induct him in the Hall of Pain. I don't know.
I will say credit to Hogan for making it through what he had to say.
Oh, yeah.
Not really stumbling, not acknowledging anything. Like, if there was one takeaway, this man is a true professional because like you could have let that situation get to you and he plowed through. I mean, I think the saddest thing on top of him getting booed was just how poorly he tore that t-shirt. And then what was funny was as he's walking away, you could still see the t-shirt hanging off his ass. And like, that's how bad that segment went, that the t-shirt didn't fully tear. And then he's like, Jimmy, brother, we got to get out of here.
Yeah. We got to get to WCW Saturday night, brother, where we belong. This ain't working.
Now, what would you think if Hogan turned heel at this time?
Honestly, I would, let's just get away from Hulk Hogan at this point. In all seriousness, you know what I mean? I just don't think that he's good publicity unless, you know, he's coming out doing speeches for the UFC where Dana White, Trump, and Kid Rock and Hogan and everybody seemed to all be like the Avengers or something to that crowd. But other than that, I just don't think he really goes well with this WWE. Yeah. I think it was Pollock or somebody said we'll have our first trade in the TKO, you know, regime. It'll be Hogan to the UFC, which I mean, I think it makes it. He gets cheered over there. I don't know if he would have been cheered in LA no matter what, but it's whatever. You know, I just don't think. I think Mark Henry put it best. Mark Henry said, when you say the kind of things he said, you can apologize. And you can do things about it. And eventually, you know, people will look at you differently. But if you never say anything or do anything about it, it's not just going to go away. Because he's offered to help Hogan out and have him come on tour with him and, you know, speak with him. Hogan didn't want anything to do with it, you know. And Mark's a guy, you know, if you ever followed Mark Henry, like he's a straight shooter. He doesn't give a fuck, you know. Somebody going to get their ass whipped. Somebody going to get their wig split. You know, Mark Henry don't give a shit. You know, like there's nothing, you know, he's not worried about any repercussions. So, but at the end of the day, yeah, I don't think it's just that though. I think the wrestling community is kind of tired of Hogan. I think it's because, you know, he's been caught lying about so many stories over the years, you know, and then you take in the political, you know, regime thing, and everybody's so divided on that too. It's just Hogan's not going to be a very popular guy in a lot of places. Some places are going to love him, I bet, though.
100%. But the thing is, WWE is sponsoring that beer. So is there a way to still mention the beer, but not have Hogan involved? Yeah.
You just put it on the ring. Just have his beer. That's where
and
you
what,
get
just run a commercial for it as well.
A commercial, like, or you Saturday night's main event nostalgia. You know, yeah.
How is that going to go for Saturday night's main event? He's been rumored to be involved with that next one coming up, and I love on the ring that it's Riyadh season in one corner and Hulk Hogan's beer in another corner. Yeah. It's just very funny.
I think that I'm going to call this now. This is my prediction. Hogan, if he's a part of Saturday night's main event, will be involved in backstage pre-tape segments.
Safe way to do it.
Yep. That's how you do it.
And that was Raw on Netflix. The first week was really good. Excited to see what they have for week 2. But the excitement from Raw on Netflix really rolled over into NXT this week. And we had NXT from the Shrine in Los Angeles. First off, love the look of the building.
Yes.
It's always great when they take this on the road, but this was such a unique looking building that I thought it really stuck out for NXT.
Yeah. It had a real old school kind of like you'd expect to see like some classic rock concerts there or something vibe to it. You know, I don't know. I just love the look of it too. But yeah, I love the show. Like it was really the change in the regard. You know, Julia, you know, gets the win over Roxanne Perez. Julia is looking like a big star for them. I love that there's also just group of talent that Shawn Michaels is putting over right now, you know, with, you know, race and things like that being a hot topic. Like Shawn Michaels has this variety of performers who are all talented from all walks of life, you know, whether you're African-American, Hispanic, whether you're Japanese, Mexican, whether you're American, you know, Venezuela, whatever, it doesn't matter. They found a way to incorporate things, get people over, and it's really made NXT a fun show. Obafemi obviously wins the heavyweight championship later in the show. So that's pretty cool. This guy has been built up like a Bill Goldberg here. One of the things I like about NXT too, Obafemi just had that program where he lost the North American title to Tony D'Angelo. But if you look at the way people are being booked in NXT back to Braun Breaker, like, especially if they believe in you, they bring you up in a dominant way. They make you look strong. And then they start doing other stuff with you. Maybe they turn you a heel. You go face heel. Then you may lose a little bit because Sean puts these guys through the ringer. So when they get to the main roster, they know how to win. They know how to lose. They know how to work heel. They know how to work face. They probably know how to be part of a tag team. So I'm a big fan of what NXT is doing. But, Joe, I'll let you lead with this next part because I know you were not a fan of it as much.
Well, there's something I want to talk about before we move on to that. And that's, we always talk about how deep that women's division is. And you start with the women's championship, and then you go to a women's tag match right after that. Or was it a women's tag match?
Well, it was a four-way where Stephanie
four-way match. That's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, because you had 6 women featured in the first 2 matches. You establish a new champion. You have a number 1 contender for the Women's North American Championship, which is another one of your big signings. So you have Julia winning a championship, Stephanie Vicker becoming a number 1 contender. Those were huge. Lexis King won the Heritage Cup in a sudden death match, which I thought was a little weird because I really like the Heritage Cup rules. And this felt like an odd move from it. But it's great to see that Lexis King storyline continuing on.
I like Lexis King. I did not like the way they got here. He won the title by disqualification, which I thought was weird and a weird way to do it. Then you say, okay, it's a gray area. Well, what the fuck does that mean? It's a gray area. So now we're going to do a sudden death match to crown the champion. But Charlie Dempsey's coming in with the title still. And we're not actually doing this under Heritage Cup rules. It was weird. Bottom line, Lexis King has the title now. Let's just go from here and see where it goes. I'm happy he has it, but I did not like the way we got to that part. Yes.
Yeah, same here. I love the storyline continuing. I really enjoyed this episode of NXT. That was the one thing that threw me off. But the thing we were going to talk about,
Rock.
The thing I had down in my notes was the Rock appearance necessary? And then I wrote, was it an overcorrection for Raw? So how'd you view the Rock appearance? And then I'll give kind of my thoughts on it after that.
I'll be honest. I didn't know what he was going to do there. I thought that was interesting. And then when he had I thought that was a shoot. I thought that was funny because I'm like, wait, what is he actually doing? And it's like, oh no, he's just coming out to talk to the audience and basically, I think, kind of say thank you for the people who showed up and making the past couple nights a big night for WWE and everything they do. He dropped the F-bomb like 7 times, which is hilarious to me because, like, literally, who the fuck is going to get away with that on WWE television other than The Rock? He's the one guy where he's bigger than the whole company, so they're just going to go, oh, that's cool, But I think a friend of the show, part-time member of the show, AJ Strange Brew, had said it best. He said, you can say what you will, but that guy loves the business. And I think that's what came through here for me. And I was really happy to see him do that. And I was really happy to see him kind of help give NXT the rub and get people to watch it. Because, look, one of the polarizing things about Raw on Netflix this week was people were arguing, okay, it was a big spectacle, but you didn't give people a reason to tune in, right? SmackDown, we'll get to that in a minute after you get your thoughts on here. We got to talk about how we thought it dragged, right? But this show, The Rock is there. Everybody knows he's talking. They put him on last, so they make everybody watch the show. And what did they do? They put over Julia. They put over Obafemi. They put over Stephanie Vicker. They put up all this new talent, and they gave you a good reason to come back next week to check out NXT, I thought. That's what I ended up enjoying about this. But Go ahead.
And I had seen some wrestling news about Obafemi talking about The Rock taking from his moment. It wasn't from a reputable source, and it was just something I noticed. But at the end, I felt like it was almost just having Rock in there for the star power. He didn't have anything specific to say. He was, constantly mentioning the time that he had, apologizing to somebody off screen for swearing. It was kind of endearing, but I also felt like kind of unnecessary, especially for NXT, because it kind of is trying to make its own identity. The part where I did think The Rock kind of worked, and only kind of, was in that Ethan Page segment, because it was not only The Rock sharing the screen with his daughter, but it was The Rock sharing the screen with Ethan Page, and Ethan Page holding himself in a way that felt like he belonged there. So that worked, but like bringing The Rock out at the end, I don't know if I necessarily felt like you had to have it in there.
Right. I think you could have had a better point. I think he would have been better off, when you mention it now, if you want to give a point, is to have him come out there and put over Obafemi.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that probably would have worked better.
Have like a point, have like a focus to what he was saying, rather than just kind of letting him go out there and freewheel it. And a show that felt like it could have used a little more focus. And if you listened to Post Wrestling, you heard a beleaguered John Pollock really talk about how long he felt this show was. And I got to say, I don't like 3-hour SmackDowns. I love a nice short wrestling show.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first week that it felt like 3 hours was a detriment to SmackDown.
Yeah, I mean, they've only done 2. The first week was fine, but they gave you everything that first week. We had a cash in from Tiffany Stratton, and so it was good. This week, though, it just felt so thrown together. This would have been an average 2-hour show at best, and in that third hour, it just made it feel like it fell off a cliff. It just didn't do anybody any favors, I thought. I don't know. It's hard to even remember what happened on this show. I remember Bayley won a 4-way or something to be a number 1 contender for Tiffany Stratton. I think that match is happening this Friday already.
Yeah, I mean, he kicked off the show with Paul Heyman coming out to announce Roman Reigns for the Royal Rumble, and that he intends to go for Cody Rhodes, which, if Roman can't be there, this is the best way to do it. But it was almost like, why not have Roman come out and do it himself? Not bad, but like could have been better.
Yeah. I liked that, because with Cena already in the Rumble, and then you're announcing Roman in the Rumble, this is giving the Royal Rumble a big, feel vibe already this week, knowing you have 2 of the biggest stars of all time going to be in that Rumble.
And how long's it been since Roman's even been in the Rumble, too?
Yeah, that's a great point, too. And I don't even know when the last time Cena was in there, honestly.
Yeah, another great match. I really enjoyed Chelsea Green going up against Mia Yim.
Yep, I like that. I like Chelsea's got Piper Niven dressed as like her, Secret Service, and they're really just going all into this United States gimmick here, especially since Chelsea's from Canada, too. I think that's kind of endearing, though. But, yeah, I don't know. I like that. So, again, no complaints there,
What kind of fell into the middle of the show was that tag match. And it was a good tag match, but it was, pretty deadly. Los Garzas, like with the Motor City Machine Guns. Should have been a bigger match, but I just think in the middle of the show, it felt a little bit lost. And that's kind of like a disservice to the Machine Guns.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and now what is the match? We got the Machine Guns actually going to be. There are separate matches. The Machine Guns won one. I think Los Garzas won the other one, and it's got now we got a Machine Guns versus Los Garza match next week, I believe.
Oh yeah, and see, that's how forgettable it was. That it all kind of blended together.
A Count Down Under was the other team. That's what it was.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, which again, great wrestlers, but it just because there's not enough focus, on this, that it's just not enough to get people to care. These matches were too long for talent that haven't been put over to that level yet in WWE. you know.
The big story we forgot about is Cody Rhodes going after Kevin Owens. He went after him in that opening segment, went after him later in the show. So they're really building up the heat between Cody and Kevin. And I think Kevin's doing excellent on his part.
Yeah, Kevin is always great. It's tough to talk about this, honestly, because it's like this show did drag. There was nothing really worth remembering in a busy, busy week. And it's like you talk to me about this stuff, and the only thing my brain goes to is like, yeah, I wonder what Kevin Owens is going to do at WrestleMania. I wonder how this is all going to be in a row. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's good stuff that I'm happy about, but it's like, man, this SmackDown just made me want to like forget about everything else and just try to think about the future.
Yeah, I'm ready for the rumored return to 2-hour SmackDowns in the summer. NXT Vengeance Day was announced for February 15th in Washington, D.C. at the Entertainment and Sports Arena. I thought that was a funny name for an arena where wrestling is.
You want to know some other funny news, too? That is the same day as the AEW Grand Slam pay-per-view in Australia.
Oh, wow. So a lot of big pay-per-views coming up. You got those. You've got Saturday night's main event coming up just before Royal Rumble. So a lot of big things to look forward to. I don't know if you know this. Matt Riddle became the MLW heavyweight champion last night. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they set up a match too.
Kojima.
They set up a match too for the next big event. It's going to be a 3-way with Riddle, Kojima, and Alex Kane is returning.
Ooh, that could be a good match. Now, was there anything else wrestling-wise that's kind of kicking around your head this week?
Fuck no. We covered it all. There was so much damn wrestling this week. Like, don't get me wrong, most of it was good. That also probably hurt SmackDown too, by the way. There was so much wrestling this week. By the time we got to SmackDown, I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm out. I guess I should say
I didn't even watch Collision last night.
Yeah. I'm watching that now. There's nothing to really spoil here. I won't spoil anything, but there's nothing. It was a fine show. Shibata takes on Garcia, so you can look forward to that. That's a good match.
Oh, that'll be a good match, definitely. Yeah.
But AEW, I thought this week had some good wrestling. Nothing is really sticking out, but again, there was so much stuff this week. It's kind of hard to have stuff stick out right now. I'm happy they're on HBO Max still. I'll say that.
Yeah, this was a heavy week for wrestling because you're coming off of, well, especially where we're doing the show now. Like, I think for the moment, our show will probably record on Sundays. So we're going to kind of be like an end of the week review show, I feel. And this was just so much. You had 2 pay-per-views. You had a big debut. You had a big NXT on top of that. So, you know, there's not a lot of extra things. AEW was the one show I haven't watched. I'm going to catch up on Dynamite. I'm going to catch up on Collision as well. But you know what I don't have to catch up on? Because they're here every week. They're in our fridges. They're in our hearts. They're Game Up Hard Hydration. If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store. Author Ray Lopez presents Lockup, professional wrestling in our world. Lockup dives headfirst into the colorful world of professional wrestling. Explore the iconic characters, careers, matches, history, and families, and delve into the bizarre and fascinating entwining of professional wrestling and film, television, football, politics, gender, and race. Pre-orders are available now on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com. This is the perfect gift for the wrestling fan in your life. Pick up a copy today on Amazon.com or at MascotBooks.com.
Hey fans, it's the man they call Dave with producer Joe, And you probably know us as the commentary team for New Heights Pro Wrestling, but when we're not doing that, we got a podcast.
That is the Working Fans Podcast, where we talk pro wrestling, comedy, MMA, and so much more.
And tell them about that signature segment.
Oh, you talk about the 531?
You know I am.
That is a homegrown creation that has been our namesake. And if you want to know our namesake, we got Chevy, AJ Strange Brew, as well as the two of us.
And why don't you go to our channel, like, subscribe, show us some love.
Rate, review, all of it.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories, including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.